Will that happen? I don't know. Time will tell. But right now, if we were looking at values, you know, how can you value something pre-COVID, in COVID, post-COVID? We're in COVID. Can't say that there's any price adjustment. It's really just people are waiting till we get back to work and we see what the fallout is. If there's folks that end up in a situation from this, that'll be a different story. But I think that we're a good 90 to 180 days off to seeing the effects of that. In the meantime, it's pretty much business as usual, and there's no increase or decrease in land.
Okay, thank you very much. I know you keep the pulse of the home building community, you know, and all segments really. And that was one of the questions is, you know, what are the home builders? How are the home builders reacting to the coronavirus? Are there, you know, sales, things like that? What are you hearing from the home builders directly? I don't know, Randy or Justin, I don't know which one.
I think Randy's trying to talk, but he's muted. There you go.
Is he back on? The question was, you know, how are home builders sort of reacting to the virus? What are you seeing in the market from the home builders' perspective?
Still can't hear you, Randy.
Where is Randy? Can we unmute?
I got muted, and I think I've unmuted myself.
There you go.
Justin, did you see that I actually did that on my own?
I'm shocked.
All right. So I would tell you that we're talking daily to small builders, medium-sized builders, and big builders, and the lenders and equity that supply them the funds they need, as well as watching the stock market. The calls from the builders, and you know, from the financial perspective of the big builders. It's really interesting how remarkably well. It's just amazing to see the attitudes out there in the home building industry be so positive. I mean, it's a kick in the pants. Sales are way down. They're at least down half. We're watching the permits by the day. I can't report yet. We will be coming out next week with the report of what we see happen for March with permits and April, because that's where really will show up. We know it's going to be less significantly, but builders, although they see sales off 50%, some cases more, some cases less, the resiliency is amazing, and they have immediately converted over to virtual sales appointments. Individually, you can get online and book an appointment and get a code and go into the homes and tour them on your own. So they've adapted very quickly to accommodate COVID, and maybe some of those things will linger on after this. It's also amazing to see that sales are still happening, although not at the volume that we saw last month or even 3 weeks ago. We saw, it's just, we're seeing big builders are still selling 50, 60 homes a week. Everybody seems to be writing deals, not as many, but there's still buyers out there that are wanting to take advantage of low interest rates. There's some deals out there to be had on homes that are standing inventory. There's some incentives going out there. So I don't think there's been a better time since the complete crash of the market in 2008 to buy a home with these low interest rates and incentives on. I think we also got a lot of positive feedback from all the builders on how well the community development offices and the permit and inspection offices are doing. They're keeping up, and they're doing well thanks to the Lee BIA and the Collier BIA and the state for allowing them to move forward. But there sure seems to be it's clear that, hey, this sucks, but it's clear that there's a lot of optimism that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a freight train. It's buyers coming from urban hotspots wanting to get some fresh air and some beach here pretty soon.
That's great news. We need to keep them coming. Well, if you're still selling somewhat, are you seeing any new land deals come together at this time, or is that on hold, or what's going on from that perspective?
I would say that, you know, is there dealings going on? Yes. Is there going to be any money going hard on something? Probably not for the time being. Most people are, like I kind of start off with, kind of on a punt or a pause on actually putting hard money down, but there's still a lot of deal making, contracts being reviewed, permits being obtained, feasibility entitlements. What we're seeing is capital outlays are put on hold for large development, money going in the ground, or significant deposits going hard on deals.
The only caveat I'll offer to that is here and there on some deals, Philip, where the base fundamentals were in place, and it's, you know, a product that is screaming to be delivered to an area, we probably will expect to have a few closings here near term. In addition to that, you know, some of the outliers that aren't directly related to home building or commercial industry, some of the agricultural deals, we got Hunter on here who's been closing some agricultural deals. Some things like that are still closing, but the direct impact, you know, retail and those type of things are definitely going to punt for a little while.
Well, thank you, Justin. I'm going to keep going on some of these questions that came in beforehand. One of was how are you changing? Have you changed how you market your properties and engage buyers and sellers? That's a question that came in from a couple of people. So can you address that?
Justin, you want to grab that?
Yeah, and the answer is 100%. Luckily, we were already in a world where if you weren't facilitating, you know, high quality imagery and drone shots and interior shots and video tours, you're already kind of behind. So clearly traffic on our website and traffic on general listing platforms has increased dramatically in recent history. So if you were set up already to have a clear picture of what your offering was by way of nice imagery and using your marketing department, you're in good shape. Are we going to continue changing and adapting to that going forward? We have to, because you know, we're not in a time, certainly not right now, like we were 6 or 8 weeks ago, where we could meet someone on a property, shake their hand, and talk about a deal and walk a property. You know, luckily we were already heading to the world of being able to get a pretty good picture of a property without setting foot on it, but that's definitely going to continue in that way.
Thank you, Justin. Please, if anybody has anything they'd like to add or chime in, you know, please, or if you have a question or would like to expand on something, please use the chat box. We'd love to get some input from, we have 40-something people on the webinar, which is fantastic. So don't be shy. I know we've been primarily talking about new home sales and land. Since we're on residential somewhat, can we talk about the resale market? What are you guys seeing there? I saw an article in the paper, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that says things have sort of picked back up over the last week or two. Could somebody address that?
Yeah, I'll grab that. It's kind of interesting. You look at on both sides of the market, what's happening for new home sales and resales, because they're so tied together, and it's interesting how they're playing on each other right now, as always comes out in challenging times. And it was interesting because the first quarter of this year, we were up 65% over quarter last year in new home permits. So last year at Market Watch in November, we were saying, hey, and even at Market Watch, we're saying, Market Trends, Market Watch, hey, let's see what happens. The only thing that really screwed up is the virus, and here we are. But we thought things were going to settle down with the permits because of apartments, you know, kind of maybe being overbuilt or maybe not. But what happened was we saw a surge first quarter. We were on for a big soar, and then we got hit with the virus. One of the things that, and this plays into the resale market, is that if you really look closely at the builders' websites, or if you visit a sales center, or if you go on the web, I mean, if you talk to a new home salesperson, what they're going to say is, why don't you come see a clean home, a fresh home, or do you want to go in that resale that's got all that grunge in it? So, and then you got the other side of it with the resale that says, hey, maybe it's a time to buy. We can wheel and deal because we can move more. And so you have that going on. But we reached out and we talked constantly to luxury new home realtors and the lower end of the market. And, you know, just recently, Denny Grimes, we spent quite a bit of time because he's watching the facts and got his fingers on the pulse as well. And listings have dipped about 20%, and contracts are down about 40%. The buyers seem to be not as rabid as they were 6 to 8 weeks ago, which is, you know, similar to what's happening with the new home building. But clearly there's a lot of people out there looking for buy one, get one free. If you've got one house and you'll throw in one, you got buyers. So there's a little cooling off, but it seems when you then go like to Mike McMurray out on Captive Island, he seems to be solid. People are, you know, that were on the fence are kind of coming in thinking they're going to get a little incentive. He's getting buyers who are saying, hey, we want to get out of New York. We had a condo on Sanibel, but now we want to go ahead and get a house. We're going to get out of there. So there's activity, and there's nobody crying the blues other than, you know, they've seen some less activity, but everybody's still pretty optimistic when it comes to resales. Again, we'll know better here when we get the results at the end of this month.
Thank you, Randy. Let's take we do have a question that just came in through chat. How is everyone dealing with the discounts builders are requesting to help with sales?
Discount from, maybe I can get more clarity, discount in what regard from sales?
It just, I don't know, Greg, you asked the question, Greg, you want to clarify that? It says, how is everyone dealing with the discounts builders are requesting to help with sales? So Greg, I don't know if you want to clarify that. We'll maybe move on. I'm not sure exactly now that I'm, you know, maybe Greg, if you want to bring that in. Here we go. Builders are asking vendors to give discounts to help. That's what he's, yeah. So I guess.
I got that.
With the builder?
That's a very good question. It's something that's on the front burner for builders and the subcontractors and the people who supply materials, because the first thing that happens, I guess we were trained in the downturn to do this, is that immediately we all flee to how can everybody else take the pain of the or the brunt of what we're going to have to do to get there. I think that what I'm seeing big builders doing, and I think that rolls down into all of the all the different types of builders, is the first thing is how do we, the question here is not as much, I think sometimes, how much are you going to discount as much as it is, how are we going to get to the other side together? Because if I don't sell homes, I can't buy your product. And yes, there's going to be some people asking for some incentives, but I think that there's a give and take there to say, how do we roll our sleeves up together and figure out how are we going to sell these homes, because just jamming the old ways, and this is the way it's going to be, probably won't work. So there's going to be some give and take on everybody's side.
Thank you, Randy. I know we've spent a lot of time on residential. Let's move into some commercial questions that we had received. One was, in commercial real estate, what impacts, again, I guess, what impacts are you seeing the impacts COVID's had on the commercial side of the real estate industry?
Sure, I'll take that. In general, follows closely the sentiments that Randy mentioned about deals punting. You know, clearly there's some different factors, and there's some industries or subsectors of the commercial industry that got hit harder than others. In general, we've been able, within our world, to keep most of our deals together that are commercial related, but we've paused 90 days, 120 days, some short, 30 days that'll probably turn into 60-day extensions. In general, there's a lot of hesitation, obviously, in the retail side of things. We have quite a few deals that are retail related that have paused for the time being. But on the opposite side, in some sectors like industrial and distribution, we've seen an uptick. We're seeing some more activity in that regard, and it makes complete sense, especially when it comes to either industrial related to distribution or services that we need, because we're heading in that direction. We're going to need more distribution centers based on the fact that we're going to be using less, probably going forward, brick and mortar. But in general, a very similar impact to what happened in the residential side, especially in the month of March, a pause. And now we're just starting to get back into it and start seeing some activity again for those who are opportunistic and starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you, Justin. One side was, and this probably goes back to both sides, is the commercial lending side. Are they in a holding pattern? How is the lending side of things being affected?
Sure. It depends on which bank you're talking to, but in general, a pause as well. Now, with some of the local banks, especially, they're still closing loans, and it's for those that, especially deals that maybe aren't as what you would call it high risk. Certainly a big slowdown in hospitality and retail lending for new builds, but loans with good fundamentals are still closing. Really, the biggest point with the lenders right now is that they've been overloaded facilitating PPP loans. So that's been first and foremost, is making sure that businesses get their PPP loans and have cash flow for payroll and rent and things like that. But again, I'm starting to see the same thing where banks are starting to become opportunistic again. They're starting to see some positivity, but proceeding with an abundance of caution. I think it's going to be a while until we start seeing the same type of lending volume on retail strip centers that we saw going into the first quarter of the year.
I want to jump in on that. Thank you, Justin. I want to jump in as far as the land side and home building. I will tell you that talking to lenders who are doing 20 to 40 to $50 million and more loans, it's clear that they're concerned, particularly on a particular sector. For example, apartments. They're very nervous. They want to see how things fill up here, because and hopefully they will. But if there's an oversupply, they're a little cautious on that. But on land deals, really, I think they're still pursuing it. Just a matter of how much equity are you going to put in. So there was some pretty aggressive lending over the last year with low downs, low equity, and I think that they'll still do the deals. They're just going to ask for some more capital up front on the loan to value.
Thank you, guys. Here's a good one. This is a good one right here. Get your tea leaves out. Which sectors do you feel will recover quickly, and which ones do you think will take a little more time coming out of this crisis?
Yeah, a bit of a dice roll there. I think that kind of follows what I said earlier about loans a bit, which is, clearly I think there's going to be a solid rebound on the industrial side. I think retail and hospitality are going to take a little longer than others. On speculative land and investment land, and Randy, you can chime in here, but I think that we're probably going to see a bump up in speculative and investment land purchases for those that flocked the stock market. There was a lot of folks, especially, a lot of our clients that got a little nervous in the stock market and pulled out cash and are now looking to invest in real estate. I think we'll start to see an uptick in that sooner rather than later, and it's already starting.
I would answer from my side, and I get a chuckle thinking about it, and this is from our friend down in College, the former president of the BIA, Ryan Benson, and a very high-end luxury builder at Avery, Vernon Allen, building homes in Port Royal. And what areas do I think will recover quickly? I think it's the people who want to remodel their home or buy a new one so they can have privacy from their spouse.
Very PC of you.
Yeah. And I didn't say either side, but it was just funny because he's got a whole new surge of people wanting to redo their houses or build different products to have space. I think as far as recovering quickly, it's an interesting question because, there's two sides I'm looking from the home building side. The big builders are really focusing on value-oriented product, and the lower end of the market, which has always been where, and particularly in Lee County and most sectors of Naples, the volume is. However, at that low end of the market, you have challenges because most of the people that are in that market are most significantly impacted by unemployment and losing their jobs. So I tend to think that, again, time will tell, but I think the quickest areas to recover are going to be those people who can service folks that have money, have a desire to be here, to move out of hot spots, and can take advantage of that.
Yeah, and you know, one other thing before we leave that question, obviously, you know, the first thing that pops into your mind is medical, and the fact that, you know, now that we're talking about healthcare more than ever, that there's going to be a huge rebound in medical. What we learned in speaking, especially with the folks who are building a lot of the medical, like Mark Stevens, he's seeing a change. Clearly, I think that, you know, medical will remain strong, and maybe we'll see a bump up in activity of new medical construction, but it's going to be a little different than what we've been seeing. We were starting to see less essential medical projects happen, you know, updating of lobbies and things like that. I think we are going to see, especially in the construction world, more projects emerge that are related to dealing with things like a pandemic situation, making sure that people have enough space in different areas of hospitals and different services. Clearly, there was a big impact, especially in the medical sector, on those who do elective surgeries. There was a lot of folks who came out very bullish in the year, looking to expand their business and do those type of things. I think that provided that we get back to the world where elective surgeries are commonplace and they're allowed to do that again, we'll continue to see that. I don't think this will impact that, but it's just going to change a bit.
Well, thank you, guys. That was the last question I had that had come in before the meeting. Do we have anybody online that would like to ask a question? I know we have a lot of people online. Any questions? I know somebody has a question.
Philip, I have a question with regards to how much in the ground or ongoing construction projects are getting canceled right now. I heard of one high-rise project on Fort Myers Beach getting pulled off. Was curious how many other people are experiencing contracts on the overall getting pulled down or canceled.
Dan, I spot on with you. I'm with you there, and been interesting. Mark Stevens. It's tough to get a full answer out of a fully accurate answer out of a home builder or a contractor, because they really don't want to. It's like calling a sales office at a home builder and asking how sales are going. You know what the answer is going to be, and it's never going to be bad. Okay, and that's the way it should be. But Mark Stevens really put his cards on the table, and we've got a couple other contractors that have as well. And we're looking at probably a 75% pause and termination on new contracts is what we're hearing pretty much across the board, unless they're focused on public projects. And the public projects obviously seem to be continuing to move on because there's public dollars.
Yeah, and you know, just to build on that a little more, on construction for things, it really depends on how far along they are, is another sentiment that we're getting from a lot of contractors. If they're just now digging footers and starting something, it's probably a higher likelihood that they're going to pause for an extended amount of time. If we're into the finishing stages and they're doing exterior facades and interior finishes, clearly, you know, a much higher likelihood of finishing a project there. It's going to be interesting to see, and especially as we can emerge from our homes and start driving around, because we had a lot of cranes and a lot of construction happening specifically in Lee County and Collier and Charlotte. It'll be interesting to see which ones we see activity on right away as we start to open back up for business.
I want to jump in on this. If you haven't, and I'm sure some of you on this call have, but if you drive over the bridge into Punta Gorda on 75, 41, you look over and if you've seen the huge cranes for the Allegiant project and that were up, and they got probably about $100 million or $150 million at least in the first 3 floors, all the concrete, all the seawalls. There's, I think, 6 cranes I counted up, and everything is shut down, shuttered. And don't want to be negative, but man, you look at that, and you look at an airline that is, going through this COVID situation, and hearing rumors, and again, no fact on that, but hey, how do you get that started again? And if it doesn't, what happens to a project like that? Because it'll cost a fortune just to tear it out of there.
Any other questions? I'm going to do a shameless plug for our next, well, we're waiting on some questions to come in. Next Wednesday, Dane Eagle, State Representative Dane Eagle, and House Majority Leader is going to be on to answer and talk about this past session, and also talk about COVID-19 and the state's response. So he's going to be joining us next Wednesday from 12 to 1. So look forward to that. Also, Randy or Justin both mentioned this. LSI Companies are doing these great videos on market trends. There's one currently up on their site. We sent it out to our members on behalf of the BIA, and they're going to be doing these. I think you're going to be doing these every other week. Is that right, Justin? All right. So watch out for those. We'll be getting
BIAs, yep.
Yeah. So that's a great way to keep up with what's going on in the market. And the first one is up on our web. I think it's on our Facebook. It's on lsicompanies.com. So check that out, and then look for those as they continue to come out. I think it will keep everybody up to date on everything. So any further questions? It's a shy bunch today.
While we're seeing if any questions come in, I think one of the most important things to get across when we talk about, what the overall impact is this is changing daily. We're having conversations within our own sales team every single day, and the conversation changes every single time we talk. So what might have been a trend that we established last week, by the time we come out with our next update that you'll see from Randy and I, it's probably going to change pretty dramatically, especially because so much of this has to do with what the governor and the president and our local officials decide on what's going to happen as far as businesses opening. Only time is really going to tell what the overall impact is. But what we know for sure is that things are changing, and it's going to look different on the other side of this. We're remaining very positive and hopeful that this isn't a long-term and devastating impact, obviously. And if we do the right things and we make sure that we continue to flatten the curve but open up responsibly, I think we'll be in good shape.
I want to close with I'm looking forward to the end of the month permits rolling out, because permits don't lie.
Yes, that's going to be interesting to see where they are. I know they've been down some, so they should be coming out soon. Well, there's no other questions coming in. I want to thank LSI Companies, Randy, Justin, thank you so much for taking time. I know everybody's busy. I hope everybody stays safe.
Philip, there is a question.
Oh, there is a question, sorry. I'd like to open up a conversation about Colonial Boulevard, 6 Mile Forum, and Ortiz corridors in regards to all of the multifamily planned and under construction projects. What is the prediction on impact?
Great question. I think that corridor has been on all of our minds over the last 18 months with all the apartment projects we've seen jump up there. Randy, I know you're going to want to weigh in on this one, but I think the most important thing is there was already a bit of a question mark around there, and really we're gonna talk about this a little bit more too in our next installment. I hate to keep plugging that, but we're hearing directly from controllers of the 5,000 units, the 10,000 units, the 15,000 unit portfolios that rents received and coming in the beginning of April were pretty solid. I think in the next 2 and 3 days, when we see who pays rent for May 1st, is really going to be a testament to what's going to happen going forward. Because clearly, there was already a stage set specific to that corridor where there was probably going to be some price battles and some incentives having to be offered up to fill those apartment units. But this is only going to exacerbate that, in my opinion.
my comment is that if you are a renter or you are a home buyer, the time is to shine for you. There's going to be, it's clearly a tenant and a home buyer market. There's obviously going to be the biggest problem I think that landlords and apartments are going to have to face and are, and we're hearing they're hitting it face on, which is really just discouraging. The amount of folks who are grouping up together to jointly say, let's fight paying rent and let's go out against the apartment developer or our project to see how long we can go without paying our rent. And that's a difficult thing to deal with because it's a social thing, not a matter of whether they have the money to pay the rent or not. Some do and some don't. But it seems that more do because rents are only down, seems like maybe 10%, 15% for collections last month. So it'll be interesting, this effect on, that kind of was similar to the downturn in 2008-9 when it became, cool to talk about at a cocktail party or avant-garde to say, hey, did you turn your home back in this week? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Hopefully we don't get to 2008. I have nightmares over 2008.
We don't need to have that nightmare. We're not there.
Well, anybody else have anything else before? I know everybody needs to get back to work. Again,
best background award goes to Jenna Persons. Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Are you actually in a lawn chair out there, or along the river, or what? What do you got going on there?
I am not, but it's an accurate depiction of today's weather. I just took the photo moments ago. It's my view at the moment from home.
Beautiful.
Nice. Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
Randy, Justin, thank you both again, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Everybody stay safe.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care.